Hello, everyone. This is Anya Farber, your host of the Zionist AF podcast. And I'm very excited today because we have Eyal today. And, I talk about topics all the time, and we have lots of guests all over the spectrum where they're living, the ages, what they're experiencing. And, we kind of have to talk about what's been going on in this country more recently. Like, it just hasn't seemed to go away. It's like the worst rash ever. And so Eyal, who is a recent graduate of college, had experienced a lot of this stuff firsthand. So Eyal, I would love for you to introduce yourself to everyone, and talk a little bit about what you were where you were just studying, and if you would like what you're doing now, and let's kind of get into like analyzing what's going on.
Sounds great. Thank you so much for having me on. As Anya said, my name's Eyal. I'm a recent graduate of UPENN. I took a year off of my job to basically be a political commentator and Jewish activist to promote Westernism, American civilization, freedom of speech, freedom of religion, the founding ideals of the United States. And right now, I mainly talk about foreign affairs and domestic politics.
So I know that our Zionist AF family right now is just kind of like, as you talk, because like I said this to you the other day, and you've been on Zooms with me because we belong to the same World Zionist Congress slate and everything. But you've got the best radio voice ever, so I think you have a secondary or whatever career if you wanted in there. But it's funny as you're saying. Well, here's what I'm doing: as I took a year off from work to do these things. What you're doing sounds like a full-time job, like that someone would be describing of advocacy in a lot of ways. But you talked about some crazy things that I think are so incredibly misunderstood, um, and kind of twisted in this country. Yes, we have freedom of speech. And I fully support people saying whatever it is that they're saying as long as you follow the guidelines. Like, there's a reason you cannot go into a crowded theater and yell fire. There's a reason you cannot say things that incite violence, encourage murder. That is no longer freedom of speech. And I feel like the narrative that's been twisted by the monsters, because we don't call them animals, because I have two dogs at home. So if you hear them barking, that's who they are. They're animals and they're sweet little souls. Okay. Monsters are who are shouting in the street. And I feel like before we even go to your experiences, like before we travel back in time, I feel like we kind of got to talk about what's going on. So last night, again today, look, that terrorist piece of garbage was arrested by ICE. So Kola Kavod and good job NYPD and ICE, because it doesn't belong here. That being said, there are people out in the street demanding his release. Meanwhile, we still have 59 hostages being held. So kind of, since you've been in the thick of it, and you were at an Ivy League school, which, has a lot of the Ivies have now been called like poison ivy. But I'm sure you worked your rear end off to get to that very prestigious school, which hasn't been acting in the way that it should. Let's start with what's going on mainly at like Columbia Barnard in New York, because we're seeing it on the news. And I also feel like we're seeing more now than last year. What are your kind of takes on that?
Definitely. I think President Trump made a promise when he was campaigning that he would detain and deport anyone who posed a national security risk to our country. He also made a promise to protect Americans and put Americans first on the agenda, not foreign nationals that come from Syria with Algerian citizenship who hand out Hamas and Hezbollah propaganda material, along with chanting death to America, burning American flags, violently taking over buildings, accosting and assaulting NYPD officers, preventing taxpayers and students who follow the law from attending class, preventing professors from doing research, and really promoting a sense of violence that has no place in the United States. So my thoughts on Mahmoud
Bam!
Khalil. So my thoughts on Mahmoud Khalil start with the fact that he was granted a visa into the United States in 2022. Since he got to the United States, he has done nothing but promote terrorist organizations, the downfall of Western civilization, and violence. That is his
So we
entire
shouldn't keep him in the U.S. and like treat him like a hero.
exactly.
It's so weird.
That's literally all he's done since he's gotten to the United States. And so I have two questions. Number one is who exactly in UCSIS, the United States Customs Borders Patrol, allowed him to get a visa and then a green card after the visa? That needs to be an investigation. And the second thing needs to be an investigation into who were his accomplices while he was in the United States. And what I mean by that is when you print out propaganda of images of Hassan Nasrallah, who was behind the murder of 221 Marines during the 1993 U.S. bombing in Beirut, when you print out the literal booklet of Hamas that justifies the October 7th massacre with the Hamas logo on it, where were those printers? Who paid for the paper? Who paid for the ink? And this needs to be an intense investigation conducted by Homeland Security, along with other agencies and the NYPD counterterrorism unit, to understand exactly what's happening, who within the system is allowing these people to even obtain visas and green cards in the first place. And the next step is to deport him and anyone else who is on a visa and not a citizen. The people who are citizens is the next step. Those people belong behind bars.
Yes, when you commit a crime, you have to have there are consequences.
100%. And so I think those are the two parts of it. And I think a lot of people are getting caught up in the noise of portraying this person like a victim. If there was an Israeli national here on a visa and they broke the law, I would be advocating equally for them to get deported. America has no place for foreigners who want to commit nothing more than acts of violence and terrorism against U.S. citizens. Flat out across the board. I don't care what country you come from. This is the United States of America. We promote freedom, equality. What we don't promote is violence and supporting terrorist organizations.
100%. And like Pam Bondi, if you're listening, I mean, I'd like to think that she's a member of the Zionist AF family, but you know, liat, it'll happen. Pam Bondi, I think you have like your newest employee right here. Because look, obviously in this country, we're dealing with illegals that have come over and are committing crimes, and we can't seem to get that under control. Whether you've come here legally or illegally, by the way, if you come here illegally, you've already broken the law and you need to leave now, or we're going to send you home. But the thing is, you're 100% correct. And they're like, oh, but his wife is an American and she's pregnant. Okay, here's what I have to say to her. Bahatz the fucking chab. Bye. Why don't you head on over to Syria with him and see how great your life's going to be there? Bye. Shalom. As President Trump tweeted to Hamas, shalom means hello and goodbye. You choose. Listen, I love the President Donald Trump because he is you said it right at the beginning. This is a promise he made and he is keeping it. Now it's Pam Bondi, it's Linda McMahon, and it's why am I forgetting his name all of a sudden? And he is the one who's doing all this. And I want to say his name is Lee.
Tom Herman.
No. Oh no, that's the Borders Are dude. No, the guy who's doing the investigations with Pam Bondi, and he's going to all the campuses. And oh my God, Leo Terrell. Excuse me, Leo Terrell. I'm so sorry that I called you Lee, but I knew it was somewhere. And I posted him the other day on my Instagram because he was just like, listen up. And I loved it. And I was like, it was just a snapshot of his appearance on Fox. So Leo Terrell, you are obviously very much welcome on the Zionist AF podcast. So is Pam Bondi. Linda McMahon is from my home state of Connecticut, WWE. Yeah. Listen, like these people are no nonsense. And I agree with you. There needs to be massive investigations because first and foremost, universities, whether they are private or public, receive federal funding. And I'm very glad that President Trump has stopped the federal funding to Columbia. Aval, that's not enough. Okay. But that's just simply not enough. Because if there are people, like you said, that are accomplices or complacent and whatever that is, it's not going to fly anymore. And any campus, and I love that there's a list. And my alma mater, by the way, is on that list. But I've already taken my diploma off the wall because I was disgusted by their behavior. And I used to be very, very proud to have called that my alma mater. And I'm sure that you're experiencing a lot of that. And you're just pretty fresh out of school, where I'm a bit more out of school. Age is a number, though. And I think that the fact that I'm someone who's looking at what's going on campuses from the outside in the sense of I'm not on campus, right? But my view of it is as a parent. I have a son who's a senior in high school, and we have made the choice as a family. He is not applying to any American university at this point. He's going to go do a gap year in Israel. He's going to do his own thing, but I'd like to see what shakes out. And it's not, capitulating to these losers. I feel like we're sending a message to the university system as a family. Like, sorry, you suck. We're not playing with you. We choose not to allow you into the sandbox. So I look at it maybe from a different perspective, from a parent, maybe more from the perspective that your parents are looking at it, because look, you worked your butt off, you got into a good school, you may or may not have had to go into debt to be there. It's a lot. And I kind of wonder, if you could share a bit of what you experienced over the last few years when you were at school, and how does that kind of shape what you're looking at and what you've decided to, and obviously that shaped you to a degree because you've decided to say, I'm going to do this right now. I'm going to take a year off from my life and advocate and speak up.
Yeah, so the ember of anti-Semitism at Penn was ignited long before October 7th, but specifically actually the 2 weeks leading up to October 7th. So within the span of 7 days, 1 week, we had someone break into the Hillel on campus, which is the center of Jewish life, and flip over furniture and yell, "Fuck the Jews." Then the next day or 2 days later, we had the Chabad Sukkah vandalized with spray paint. Then 3 days later, we had a massive red swastika spray painted within a campus building. And while all of this was going on, there was also an anti-Semitism conference basically happening on campus where they invited speakers such as Roger Waters,
Oh,
Mohammed
splendid.
Al-Kurd, Nora Erekat,
Wow, you're just
Rafat
getting all the winners.
all the biggest players of anti-Semitism
On Penn's campus.
on Penn's campus, also during Yom Kippur as well.
How exactly was that even allowed?
Well, again, it's freedom of speech.
Okay, sure.
However,
That's
something that I discuss a lot is that if universities were upholding this notion of freedom of speech for the past 2 decades, we wouldn't be in the situation we are today. The reason we're in this situation is for the past 2 decades, universities have shut down, marginalized, and completely pushed out any contrarian speech to what the dogma of the ivory tower presents. I'll give you an example. Ben Shapiro was supposed to speak on campus 4 months after this anti-Semitic fest happened. Whether you like Ben Shapiro or not, objectively speaking, Ben Shapiro should be much less controversial than, let's say, Rafat Alarir, who tweeted out, "Are all Jews evil? Of course they are."
I'm sorry. Is the controversy over Ben Shapiro that he can shut you down in like super speed speech? I mean, the man speaks so fast. I look, I happen to know, like, I've met him several times. Like, I respect him, but I'm not really sure. I can't imagine what's so controversial about him, except for the fact that he can speak faster than any other human I've ever met, logically take someone's argument and shut them down. Like, is that the problem? So freedom of speech, not if you talk too fast? Is it because he talks so fast that stupid people can't understand him? Was that the problem?
The common quote is freedom of speech for me, but not for thee. And I think that's the issue with universities. And I also don't think that universities should be able, in terms of freedom of speech, to have people that promote terrorism or violence.
Correct.
There needs to be some sort of Overton window that the university operates within of what's appropriate speech and what's outside the bounds of what should be on a college campus. We want to push students to think and to open their minds and to hear opinions that they dislike or makes them feel uncomfortable, but that's different than opinions that are literally meant to make them feel unsafe. And we saw that exactly unfold on Penn's campus, where while you have an entire event with a slew of speakers who are promoting terrorist groups, who are promoting violence against Jews, violence against Americans, at the exact same time that those people are speaking on campus, you have a swastika, you have someone breaking into the Hillel, you have the Chabad vandalized. And so those words, promotion of violence, is equating in this situation violence against students who are just trying to go and study. Then you have October 7th, which was a combustion of anti-Semitism and anti-Americanism on campus. We had on October 8th we had students and faculty at Penn promote and attend a rally in Center City, Philadelphia, where a speaker said, and I quote, "I salute Hamas for a job well done. Those 250 hostages, fuck them. We don't care." That is, and I quote, of what students and faculty were promoting on campus. Fast forward about a month, you had a building occupation that lasted 3 weeks on campus where students weren't able to access the literal student center on campus. Then you have all the protests and vandalism and hundreds of thousands of dollars of damage being done to school, along with classes being canceled. And then you have the encampment, which shuts down half of campus. And so this isn't a fine line where we're splitting hairs, whether this is freedom of speech or whether this is conduct that is illegal. This is conduct that's illegal. And so if you want to say stuff that I disagree with, I'm happy to debate that whenever anyone wants. But once you cross into the line of over the line of violence, harassment, targeted harassment, promotion of violence, promotion of terrorist organizations, that is when the hammer of justice needs to be pounded down on these students. And I think a great actual example of this, and a microcosm of it, is what Tom Homan's doing, the borders are, in terms of illegal immigration into this country. So if you look at the average detentions that are happening in the United States now compared to Biden, they're significantly higher. But why exactly is illegal border crossings down by 96%? We haven't built a wall. We haven't deployed more ICE agents to the border. We haven't been leveraging the military to go down to the border and shut it down. So why exactly are there 96% less illegal immigration, illegal border crossings happening now than there was 4 months ago? The reason is it's deterrence. That Tom Homan has made it a clear signal to individuals who want to cross over into our country illegally that they will not have a safe refuge here and they will be kicked out. And this is the exact same thing that's happening with Mahmoud Khalil. Is it sends a message to every other person here on a visa that you being in this country is a privilege. It's not a right. And that privilege can be stripped from you whenever the government pleases if you violate the law, if you are a national security threat. And so that is what President Trump is doing. He's sending a signal to all other people here on visas that if you go into the streets and you accost our police officers, if you go and take over buildings, if you vandalize public property, that you will be sent back to where you came from, and we will not be thinking twice about it. And for anyone who saw the Senate Judiciary, the Democrats posted free Mahmoud Khalil. But if you go to the Senate Judiciary Committee and you scroll through their posts, you won't see a single post calling for the release of 5 American hostages that are still being kept captive by Hamas. And I think even if they do think that it was an unlawful detention of Mahmoud Khalil, which it's not, objectively it's not
in any way, shape, or form.
Why is this the hill that they're dying on? There are plenty of unlawful detentions that happen in the United States, unfortunately. Why is this the one that they posted? Objectively speaking, even if Mahmoud didn't violate the law, he's clearly an anti-Semite who promotes anti-Americanism and terrorist organizations. That is an objective.
Yes.
This is the person that they decide to martyr and make their hero. And it's truly disgusting. And I'm glad that the midterms are coming up and 3 Democrats on the Senate Judiciary Committee are up for re-election. And I will make it my mission to ensure that whoever is opposing them wins. Because you cannot have people in the government who support Syrian nationals, who support terrorist organizations, over law-abiding American students who simply want to attend class.
So I think let's do this right here and now, a call to action to everyone in the Zionist AF family. Like, I am always, screenshotting these losers and saying, like, identify, and put those on lists, people and future employers. But more so, I want to second what you are saying, that we should join together and do everything possible. Listen, anyone who's in the Zionist AF family, and at this point, I'm kind of sort of speaking to some of my own family right now. Jexit, baby, Jexit. If you have not left, I don't know why. There's absolutely no reason. If this is not like hello, like red flags, bleeping red. Oh my God. Leave the Democratic Party. Send a message. I honestly think that they're looking for the most disgusting, absurd, just vile things. And this is like, yeah, it's like, why is this the hill that you want to die on? I honestly have no idea, because I go back to things that, like Hillel Fuld says, you have to just suspend common sense, suspend logic when dealing with these people, because there is none of that. So, but I think it's disgusting and shameful that there are people that are in our government who are actively basically being anti-American, and they are supporting people who want the destruction of this country. Okay. I have to say that, I can't imagine what that was like as you're talking about these things, but I wanted to circle back to the pre-October 7th that you talked about on campus. Did they ever catch any of the people who broke into the Hillel and caused all of that destruction, painted the swastika, or any of the vandalism to the sukkah? Did they catch any of them?
So the student who broke into the Hillel, they did arrest. However, then they put out that it wasn't a student, even though afterwards it came out that it was in fact a student who did that. In terms of the swastika and the Chabad spray paint, they said that they weren't able to identify someone. However, just in terms of the swastika, it was inside a campus building, which
So there's
requires
cameras.
2 levels of ID swipes. And so it'd be very easy not only to check security cameras, but also ID swipe to understand who exactly sprayed to the swastika.
So it had to be a student because you had to swipe an ID
It
or a
had to be
faculty member.
with building access. And then in terms of your point of like Jackson leaving the Democratic Party, look, the Democrat Party is definitely going through an inflection point right now where they just lost the Senate, the House, and the White House. And the fact that they're doubling and tripling down on promoting someone who is fundamentally anti-American is just fully disgusting. Luckily, there are Democrats who are incredible, and this is coming from someone who disagrees with them about basically every other thing except their love for this country. And you have people like John Fetterman and Richie
John
Torres.
Fetterman, yes.
Even though I disagree with them on multiple policy issues, I know for a fact that those two people love this country to death, and they might have different ways for how they want to see the country move forward. But at the end of the day, they love this country, and that's all I care about in terms of politicians. I always tell people that if you disagree with me on politics, it's totally okay. But what I tell people is this is the test for where you should be voting. If the candidate that you're voting for were on within the anti-Semitism hearing that had happened in December of 2023 with the presidents of Harvard, MIT, and Penn, if that candidate was sitting in the seat of any of those presidents and they were asked at the time, just calling for the genocide of Jews violate the code of conduct, if they weren't able unequivocally to say, yes, of course it does, it is absolutely disgusting, and if someone does that, they will be removed from the school, then they should not be a candidate that you're voting for. And during the presidential election, that's what I told people. Would Kamala Harris sit there and say that? 100%.
No.
She would have said exactly
I don't think she could have formed a sentence that would have
100%.
even. Yeah.
She would have sat there and said exactly what those other 3 presidents had said. And that is the litmus test, in my opinion, for where Jewish votes should be going if you care about the future of the Jewish people. If you don't, vote for whoever you want.
But it's not even just, do you care about the future of the Jewish people? Because, we do have non-Jews that are part of our Zionist AF family, but also you and I are both Americans and we live in America. And the thing is, American values mean that, okay, there was a period in history, right, where we treated a group of people differently, like they were less than. Their rights did not matter as much as others. Horrible, dark time in history. Maybe part of the problem is we don't actually teach anything anymore in public schools. So maybe, they don't know what segregation actually was, and that, depending on the tint of one's skin, you were treated differently. It's deplorable. It's disgusting. But the thing is, everyone can say, oh, yes, that's horrible. You cannot treat Black people that way. You cannot treat the LGBTQ, whatever else, many letters, and I'm sorry because I don't know how many letters there are now, community differently. That's not okay. But if there were telling, students from the LGBTQ or the Black community or the Asian community or the Hispanic community, I'm sorry, if you don't like it or you feel unsafe, go in another door or stay home, nobody would stand for that. But the fact that Jewish students are being told just stay home, go in another door, oh, just deal with it, like whatever, it's the same thing. Hate is hate is hate is hate. And when you prevent students from accessing buildings, when you are threatening them, when students are so scared to leave their dorm rooms or be on campus or can't access their classes, or literally sitting in class being told you're nothing, you're less than, you should be eliminated, that is not okay. Education in this country, like, secondary education of the college, it's a privilege. It's not a right. And quite frankly, I think what this has shown us more than ever is it's not for everyone, and that's okay. But you cannot behave in a way that is, like you said, it is illegal. It is calling for the destruction or elimination of people. That's genocide. You can't call for genocide. That is not something that's okay. And I don't know how it is that in this country we have allowed these protesters to assault police officers, assault other people, and there's no consequences. And I don't really know how to explain this except for the fact that, we're not enforcing laws in this country. And therefore, if one law isn't enforced, then of course they think like, oh, whatever, or their demands for amnesty. I think, you are clearly a very intelligent young man. So I know that you know what amnesty means, but I laugh when I hear all these people be like, and I am demanding amnesty. I'm like, first of all, could you spell it? Because, when they were writing all that stuff on the walls, like they can't even spell correctly, which is deeply disturbing. But can you spell it, and can you use it in a sentence that shows me you clearly understand what it means? I don't think they can. So that's like a whole other part of this. I feel like it's nonsensical, and I get more and more angry as a parent, right? Like, I'm not your parent, but I'm angry about what happened to you in that way. Because, in a sense, and you know our friend at Alphabet Jewelry, she handed out Magen Davids last year to students who were being persecuted because she said on our podcast, Anya, they're our children. Are they her actual biological children? No. But she's like, I want them to know that we all support them, right? Like, I hope that you know that all of us, whether you're a parent or someone's only a few years older than you or a few years younger than you, that you are supported. And I'm mad, I'm sad, I'm a lot of things for what you went through, because it's absurd. But like you said, it started before. And I think it's not what I think our biggest problem is that we're not really addressing the fact that this has been festering for years. Now, in addition to all of this being allowed, like another thing that we're not really talking about, and I don't mean you and I here on the podcast, but in this country, is the fact that these universities and colleges are accepting money from foreign countries like Qatar and Saudi, and these countries that are promoting these views. Okay. So, at some point you got to pay the piper. If a country is giving you millions and millions of dollars, they're expecting something in return. And this has been going on for decades. And it's because it's not been policed or addressed, I think it's built to the point where it's this eruption. Maybe you agree, maybe you disagree. Do you think that that has anything to do with, everything that's going on campus? Like, listen, there's no, I have no words to describe like what you went through, what a lot of other, young Americans are going through.
Yeah, in 2022, a bipartisan Senate committee conducted a study of, I believe it was 50 something universities, and compared the curriculum pre and post Qatari influx of money. And they found that at, I believe, 47 out of 50 of the schools, so that's 94% of the schools, the curriculum shifted to be more anti-American after that money flowed in to the universities. And so when Qatar gives you we're talking millions and millions of dollars to universities. There are strings attached,
Hmm.
especially when universities such as Cornell and Northwestern actually have physical campuses in Doha. Those are now administrators at the top level coming from an Islamist country that is setting policy down the road for American students to be indoctrinated by. And we see specifically actually in Middle East studies departments where they've been absolutely flooded with money and professors on visas coming from abroad to propagate anti-American and pro-terror literature and research on college campuses, and that's across the board at universities. And the reason is that they're funding these foreign governments are funding the research actually of professors, and you can even see that some governments are telling professors, we want you to conduct this paper, we want you to conduct this study, this is the conclusion that you're going to get, figure out how to get there. And so universities have literally become a cesspool of extremism and just pure indoctrination of American students. And on top of that, we have universities, the top universities specifically in this country, that more than 50% in some cases of their student body aren't even Americans. And so this begs the question, why exactly are billions of dollars of US taxpayer money flowing to universities when 50% of the students that are being educated aren't even Americans? I'm happy to spend my tax dollars on Americans getting educated because it's an investment for me. Those Americans will then get educated, get good jobs, and then give back to the system, and then the system will give it down to the next people. I don't
Correct.
feel comfortable or want to give my tax dollars to a foreign student that's coming to the United States and learning, and then not recontributing to the American taxpayer system, especially if those students are then prohibiting American students from studying. And so there's just a lot of questions that are logical and need to be answered as to why certain things are happening, in my opinion.
So again, I'm going to say Pam Bondi, President Trump. I think you just need to talk to this young man because he's literally like, here, I've already figured most of this out. Let's get to it. Now, I wanted to share two things with you and get your opinion because as everything, continues to show its face for what it is, sometimes you think little things, you see them and you're like, and you're not really sure. But I remember being on the University of New Haven campus, and University of New Haven is it's not a incredibly large school, but it's known for criminal justice. Okay, so they have a lot of people that are looking to go into federal law enforcement and state law enforcement and even local law enforcement that go to that school. So the reason I'm gonna call them out, and I really don't care, like whatever, University of New Haven. Um, when I was on their campus, I was like, what the heck is going on in this place? And I saw it was like a graduation ceremony for all of these women, young women from Saudi Arabia. And I asked someone, I'm like, what the heck is this about? Like, why are they having their own little shindig? And they're like, oh, well, UNH has this cooperation where they have a campus there. And they have a whole set of faculty that's there. And, these are girls because they come from so much money because it's, Saudi Arabia, that they don't have, their families have gotten them like their own thing. So it's a female only program. So they're contained or whatever. I don't know. But all of these millions and millions and millions of dollars formed this like suspicious. And I'm like, wait, but like at some point, like the piper's going to want to be paid. So what's going on with that? And look, I was like, I happened to be like going through, I saw it wasn't like I could be like, excuse me, but I was like, that is very strange. And that happened to be like a decade ago. Now, um, at the time this bothered me. This is something even farther back. So in 2000, I was working for the Israeli government as a public and media affairs officer in Boston, and I had decided to go and get my graduate degree in international communications, crisis communication, specifically through my alma mater, where I got my undergrad degree because it was a very strong communication school. And in my class, in my graduate class, there was a young man from Saudi Arabia. And that wasn't like an issue, aside from the fact that as the semester progressed and we were learning things that, well, we were being taught things that I was like, excuse me, I work for the Israeli government and I'm going to have to disagree here. It's like, and whatever. But it got to the point where for spring break, he said, okay, I'm taking everyone to Saudi Arabia on me. And I said to him, I'm not going. And he was like, no, it'll be fine. You'll be with me. And I was like, pigs could be kosher and fly, and I'm still not going. So I go to work and I'm like, hey, guys, look what I just got invited to. And they look at me, they're like, you're not going? I'm like, yeah, I know I'm not going. Like, I don't want to go. But essentially, he took my class and they had this whole little indoctrination thing. And for the rest of the semester, it was even more uncomfortable. And I did complain and I like lodged complaints at the school and all of those things. But it was like, this was back in 2000. It was before 9/11. So maybe it was 2001, but it was somewhere in that time frame. And so like it was starting, if not starting, maybe it had already been started even before that. And I think that that's something that we are just not willing to look at. And we've allowed this to happen because we have said nothing or not paid attention, and maybe it was just little things here and little things there. But now, like you said, we're at a point where more than 50% of the students, like the whole reason federal tax dollars go into universities is for them to have ADA access, like so for all students to have equal access to that education that they got into that school to study, which those federal dollars are to support all American citizens, like you said. But it's overwhelming, and I know a lot of private donors have pulled out, but I at this point I'm calling for any donor who's an American and likes this country and would like to live in a free country the way that we were founded. They need to speak up, and I think what you're doing is meaningful. It is needed, and I hope that more and more and more people are listening to you, because what you're saying is just, it's alarming, but it's true. And I think we need to start toughening up so we can address the things that are maybe scary, but they need to be addressed.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think with all due respect, in that scenario, like I think that's a little bit different. Like that might be like morally incorrect because at the time in 2001, for instance, Saudi Arabia didn't allow women to drive or leave their home without a male guardian. And so I think that's morally incorrect, but 100% legal and should be able to happen. And people should be able to freely choose whether or not to travel to Saudi Arabia like you did. But I think what we're dealing with now is a little bit more severe, where people are actively violating the law and promoting terrorist organizations. So it's okay if you want to promote Saudi ideals, which I do think are in conflict with Western ideals. Saudi Arabia, of course, is a close American ally and not a designated terrorist organization.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to be on a foreign visa and support, let's say, Osama bin Laden, who was born in Saudi Arabia, then that's a bit different, and that does violate the law, and you can actually get deported for that because you pose a national security threat, and the State Department does have the ability to deport you. But in terms of people just freely traveling, I think that should be allowed, and people should be able to make their own decisions.
No, I made the choice not to go, and my comment to him was, when women can drive, when women can walk freely, and when people can be openly gay in your country, then I'll go.
Yeah, and luckily now Saudi Arabia has significantly reformed since Mohammed bin Salman has come to power, and they're slowly reforming it. I hope they continue to do so and continue to also change their education system to teach let's call it less fundamentalist ideas to their young children, and so they do have a more metropolitan, cosmopolitan country that is modernizing rather than stuck in the Stone Age like some of these Middle East countries who just teach fundamentalism, abuse women, abuse the homosexual community, who violate minority rights. And so I think Saudi Arabia and the Gulf in general, with the caveat of Yemen, of course, and Qatar, that they're moving in the right direction, and we're seeing a new Middle East that wants to modernize and be part of the Western world rather than stuck where the average the average worker brings home a couple $100 a year.
Yeah, and I mean, again, and look what's going on in Syria still, and the fact that all of these Christians were just brutally massacred. That's, guys, that's genocide. Okay, and not enough people are acknowledging that or talking about it. But these are the, like, that idealism, that twisted fundamentalism that allowed people to do this so freely, and allowed the people who perpetrated October 7th, and there is corruption all over, and there is this disgusting amount of fundamentalism all over, and like you and I could spend hours talking about how the Red Cross is full of shit, and UNRWA is like literally full of terrorist monsters, and the UN is the useless nations, and just absolutely disgusting. But that's, like I said, we could spend hours talking about that, but today I wanted to really focus on what is going on our college campuses, the university campuses in this country, because we do need to reclaim our American values. We need to remember what this country is about. And I think, I look back to last year in the South at one of those campuses where the boys from that fraternity like stood up, fought back, and were like, oh, hell no, you're not going to take down the American flag and burn it and raise up a terrorist flag, like not on our watch. And I was like, yeah, way to be the South, and it was a band of brothers. So like, why is it, do you feel that on certain campuses, whether it's the student body or the administration, has said no, like, we are not going to tolerate this, whereas on other campuses it's like, okay, I mean, talk about capitulating. The president of Columbia was like, okay, well, I will meet with 3 unmasked representatives. Okay, like, I need to put that right there. If you are so die hard about your beliefs, show me your face. My name is Anya Farber. I'm the host of Zionist AF. I will tell you anything you want to know. I'm not hiding. And I'm very vocal. But yet, the terrorist supporters, the people in the encampments, all of the things you've talked about, everyone is masked.
Yeah, I mean, I'll keep it brief because I also know we're running out of time. But I think it's, at the end of the day, it's about the education, what we're teaching students. If we're teaching students to hate the United States, then they're gonna give up on American values. If we're teaching students that America is an imperfect nation, but that's also what makes it perfect, because we're always trying to achieve something better, which is, in my opinion, what makes America the greatest country on earth, that students will respect our country, respect our flag, respect our traditions, respect our values. And I think what we're seeing right now is an overall sense of entitlement amongst students that, luckily, the United States has been in a position for since 9/11, honestly, that we haven't had any attacks at home, and that the average American lives a much better life than nearly anyone else anywhere else in the world. We live a sense of security. We don't have to worry about, for the most part, whether we're going to be attacked in the street or kidnapped or murdered. And so there's a sense of entitlement, and American values, in my opinion at least, are worth fighting for, with blood and with words, and to promote the ideals. And anyone who disagrees with me can present to me a better country that they would prefer to live in. And if that's the case, with all due respect, then they should move there. But I definitely want to be an American. I definitely want to live in the United States, and I definitely want to fight for our values.
So if you could give, like, a summarizing statement or a call to action, whether it's targeted specifically to your counterparts in your generation, or it's overall America, with everything that you've gone through and everything that you're working for this year, what would you say?
I would say, and this is what I tell everyone, that the vast majority of Americans agree with basically everything that I'm saying. The issue is that not enough people are speaking up. So my message to anyone listening, Jewish, not no religion at all, it doesn't matter, is to just speak the truth. And it's liberating to just say your truth and speak your mind. And if we have enough people speak up, then we won't have to worry about any of this anymore, because the Overton window will shift back into promoting American values, and the lunatics on both ends of the spectrum will just digress into nothing. We'll forget about them in terms of the history books. And when you look back in history, the people who speak up are always remembered most positively, and the people who are cowards and didn't speak up at all are viewed as accomplices to those that tried to destroy freedom and civilization at large. And so if you want 100 years from now to be remembered as someone who wasn't a coward, now's the time to speak your truth. And it doesn't have to be, giving speeches across the country. It doesn't have to be going on the news. Just speak your truth. It can be to one of your friends. Just speak your mind, and let's move back the Overton window where it should be, that the middle, whether you're Republican or Democrat, you just love this country and you love the ideals and you want to promote the ideals as much as possible. And so my message is to simply speak the truth. That's all.
Well, the truth shall set you free. So, kol hakavod for everything that you're doing, Eyal. Guys, if you have any questions, or you're like, okay, I want to know how I can speak up a little bit better, or let me learn a little bit, all of the ways to contact will be listed in our summary section as always. I want to say to you, toda rabah, kol hakavod. I have so much respect for you. I cannot wait to see all the things that are coming from you, because great things are going to happen. So again, Pam Bondi, President Trump, I'm just saying, you might want to write down this young man's name, because you are going places, my friend. Do not stop. Be who you are, because who you are is a strong and amazing young man. And the Zionist AF family has much love and respect. And listen, anytime you would like to come back, you have an open invitation to our podcast. So thank you so much.